started, can you take us all back? Where did your fitness journey start? What inspired you and what motivated you to take this path and to want to help others?
That's a lovely question. I think it's a great way to kickstart this. So I was always involved in movement, in sports, from a young age. Dancing was definitely my thing. Did it from 3 years old. Danced up to 5, 6, 7 times a week as I got into primary and high school.
What type of dancing?
Oh, ballet, modern, contemporary, hip-hop, everything except tap dancing. There's just one thing I couldn't quite get right. But definitely a big fundamental stage in my life and a big passion of mine, dancing. And then, got involved in athletics in high school. Was never really a competitor field sports player. That didn't really interest me. And then, all right, so here is where it gets interesting. The first year after high school, we went through quite a big, let's say a little bit of family trauma, and we'll touch on that a little bit later on one of your topics.
Okay.
And this is where I was led to the beauty of what fitness is able to offer us as people, and it's free. And why I say that is, so my boyfriend's mother, who is now my mother-in-law, she said to me, Caley, why don't you come and try a group fitness class? So I was interested, but at the same time I knew that it wasn't quite my scene. I'd never done it before. The ladies that were there weren't really my age group, so I was really stepping out of my comfort zone, but I thought, what do I have to lose at this stage? And the moment that I stepped into that studio, the community of people that were there at the group fitness, the gym that I was a member at, they just became such a big fundamental step in the next part of my season in life. And the instructor at that stage, not only did she become my fitness mentor, but she became my Christian mentor, and she just took me under her wing and she helped refocus my purpose. Once I tasted the benefits of what fitness could offer me, there was no looking back after that. And I thought if I could give somebody the opportunity back in life as to what this woman had given me, it would make me a happy person. It was such a healthy space to be a part of.
It's interesting that you talk about kind of exercising social, in group classes.
Yep.
And another one of the sections on my book is how social interaction is good for the soul. So not only when we exercise do we release the chemicals, the feel-good chemicals, but when we interact socially with other people, you've got other chemicals that are released, like oxytocin and things like that. So, for many years, I did exercise on my own, a lot of running. I never really exercised in groups. And it was only when I started exercising with other people and exercising in groups is that, you think, oh my God, what have I been doing? It was really only when I moved to Dubai. The social interaction as part of the exercise process, I think
It's a
really
total
important.
different world, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think as people, we all have different spaces that we are drawn to, and sometimes we go through seasons where we are more comfortable training by ourselves, but in other seasons of life we need that community to be a part of and to be accountable to. And as you say, that social interaction, the accountability, just that mental, that refreshing vitality and connection that you get with people, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what got you started on your fitness journey and you wanting to help others.
Yep, that's what happened.
Amazing. So let's kick this off then by introducing the themes that we spoke about initially. Now, what really happens inside the body kind of when you exercise? Do you think there's a connection between exercise and happiness, and how much exercise should we do daily?
Great question. So I think that all boils down to each person. We've all got a certain threshold. We all have a certain capacity. And your capacity is very different to my capacity because you're in a different season to where I am at. And the different stresses of life that I have to deal with versus what you have to deal with, again, are two different things. So I think it's really a case of playing with what makes you, playing around with a couple of different daily schedules and seeing what works for you, what makes you feel refreshed, not mentally or physically tired. Because it's now my profession, I do and I enjoy training 1 to 3 times a day, and I generally take maybe 2 recovery days during a 7-day week. Whereas some people that have full day 8 to 5 jobs, they have children, they've got a lot of other elements they're needing to focus on. 3 times a week, it probably fits them best, and they feel that like they can maintain that amount of exercise, be happy, and experience the benefits and vitality that fitness give you,
I really liked what you said then about exercising so that, I'm not sure what it was you exactly said, but exercise so that you feel refreshed rather than literally worn out.
Yeah. You don't want it to feel like homework. We call it the love stamp. So every day you wake up in the morning, you want to look forward to whatever it is that you've connected with, whether that's your personal training, whether that's outdoor fitness training, whether that's group fitness training, and it's got to be something that you so thoroughly look forward to, because it's going to make you feel refreshed and, as I said, touch on the vitality.
Definitely. Oh, that's what you said, yeah, refreshed and revitalized. I can really relate to that because for many years I did a lot of endurance sport, Ironmans, not full, half, marathon runners.
It's quite inspirational.
Marathon runner. And I used to do a lot, long distances, that was my thing. But quite often when I would finish training, like for many, many years, that's what I did. Like literally every weekend, like during the week I trained, but every Friday and Saturday, which is our weekend in the UAE, I'd be up at 4 a.m. on the morning doing 100k bike rides or doing a 20, 30k run. And after it, I would be lying on my sofa and I would often say to myself, I might as well have gone out last night because I feel really, really ill. And I think it was probably dehydration, looking back, and I'd never quite got the nutrition. And over the last couple of years, that's when it was my acupuncturist actually said to me, and he said what you just said about exercise, it should kind of revitalize you, it should refresh you, not completely wear you out. But I'd actually got it into my mind that I didn't really work out unless I was dead, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear you say that. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad that you've made that reflection and that going forward in your fitness journey, you've identified the difference between something that's really taxing on your body, but also highlights certain things like mental endurance and commitment and finishing races like that. It is quite inspiring.
I think with endurance is always going to tire you out. Always. If you've done 100k on the bike and it's really hot, or you've done, pounding the pavements for 30k, it's always going to tire you out. But the way you combat that is through sleep, through good nutrition, through hydration. And whilst I was doing a lot of exercise for many, many years in that capacity, didn't quite get all those elements right. So, and I feel so much I probably don't look as fit now, and I know I don't, but I feel so much healthier.
What are you talking about? You look gorgeous. Look at you.
Okay. So do you think that exercise makes us happier?
100% yes. The moment that I stepped into that group fitness space, way back then, I just saw such a change in my mental well-being. I saw such a change, not only aesthetically in my, physical appearance. That was a byproduct of what I was doing, but the endorphins I was releasing. I was clinically depressed at that stage, and a couple of months later, I was easily off the antidepressants that I was on, and that was just because I was integrating fitness and a healthy and nutritional life. It was integrated into my lifestyle. That is what made the change.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My next question, Carly, is for me, I find that morning routine is really important if I'm going to have a productive day. Do you have any specific routine, and why do you think the power of repetition is important?
That's a great question too. So at the moment in the season of life that I am living, I do a lot of international travel. So I am constantly on the road, which means routine and repetition is something that's a luxury to me. When I am home, I do my absolute best to slip back into my routine as fast as I can, because I know in a couple of days' time I'm going to be packing my bag and I'm on the airplane again. So when I am home, sleep is a very, very big element for me and my husband. We try to get at least 8 hours of sleep in a day, especially because I'm physically active and I need to, my muscles need to recover. I need to give my brain and my muscle the support that it needs in order to carry out what I'm doing.
When it comes to sleep, do you have any specific kind of, how do I phrase this? Specific routines or anything that you follow when it comes to your sleep? Like, I don't know, like blackout curtains, for instance? Or...
For me, light doesn't actually bother me. However, my husband needs everything blacked out. So I suppose I've now gotten used to sleeping in a very dark space. Even if there's like the TV light is on, he needs to block that out too, that little red light. But for me, that doesn't really bother me. Sometimes we take magnesium oil spray and we'll spray that behind our knees. In the evening, that generally, I think that stimulates the melatonin release in your brain. And on evenings where I'm struggling with jet lag, that sometimes helps me to just ease into my sleeping patterns. However, yeah, I think for us it's really important just to have our downtime where our lights are going down probably about 30 minutes to an hour before we close our eyes, just to decrease all the stimulation. Phones are away and we're just sort of bringing the energy down for the day before we close our eyes.
Yeah, interesting. They do say to get a good night's sleep that, like you were saying with your husband, get rid of all the lights, even like tiny little lights from the alarms, get good blackout curtains,
lower the noise in the home.
Yeah, have the room to a certain temperature. You can say about 21 degrees, which I think is absolutely freezing. But
we don't have AC at home, so whatever the temperature's doing outside is happening inside. And that's how it is. Yeah, so sleep is a big thing for us. When we wake up in the morning, breakfast is my priority meal of the day. I love to have eggs integrated with a whole bunch of vegetables. I have a piece of toast on the side. I'm not gluten intolerant. I'm very fortunate not to have too many intolerances. So I'll have a cup of coffee, piece of toast, and I'll have my eggs and a whole bunch of vegetables. I believe a really colorful plate has a whole bunch of nutritional value. So color on my meal plates is always a priority for me. And then the day begins. So I'll be teaching a couple of classes. I see a couple of clients in the day. It's admin, it's email, it's work. And then I'm training and teaching in the evening again. And then dinner again is a really big priority for us. So making sure I set the time aside to cook a wholesome meal for myself and my husband is a big deal for us. And that is sort of what, that routine is what helps just set the body in tune. This might be a little bit, I don't know, graphic for everyone listening to this, but how good do you feel if your tummy and your metabolism is running once a day? We feel so healthy, but without 100%. Routine, we don't have that. We become stagnant. Our bodies and our digestive system becomes stagnant, and that affects our brain. So in order to create a really healthy flow within your mind, but at the same time in your digestive system, it's such a priority.
How much water do you drink a day?
Good question. I try hit about 2.5 liters because I'm sweating a lot during the day with all the classes I'm teaching. So I try to have a really big bottle of water with me all the time. Clock a bottle in the morning, clock a bottle in the evening, and then try drink throughout the day. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Carly. Okay, so food is... Caley. Sorry.
No worries.
Have I been calling you Carly throughout? Oh, no. So sorry about that. Okay, Caley, food is our life source. It can heighten our mood and it can destroy our mood. Now, we've touched on very briefly that you like your plate to be very, very colourful when you eat. Are there any top foods that you think that we should be eating to boost the brain power, to enable us to feel energized and to improve our memory?
Balance is key. We gotta have a whole bunch of colors. I love my greens and my purples. Great antioxidants, high in fiber. They give me the energy source that I need. So greens and purples are my big one. I love integrating English spinach into all of my foods, whether it's my scrambled eggs in the morning or my smoothies in the afternoon. Blueberries, fresh berries are great after workout, a great source of sugar and carbohydrates too after a workout or before a workout. Okay. But lots of color. We've got to have it all balanced.
What about processed foods?
I try stay away from this. However, in the life we live at the moment, it's really challenging, and I think we all can agree with this, right? Time is of essence. We're always time short. But I suppose when you have food groups that are whole, something you can pluck out the ground or you can pick off a tree is just the best. The less cooked it is, having your skin on your vegetables and your fruits has got a high nutritional value too. And just trying to stay away from sauces and tinned foods because as you say, it's processed, it's got a lot of preservatives, it's got a lot of added chemicals. You want to try and keep that out of your body.
Yeah, okay. My next question is all about overcoming fear and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Now, Caley, what do you think of the concept that life begins at the end of your comfort zone? And do you have a story, any specific story that you can share with the audience about how you've challenged your fears?
So many. However, one that really stands out to me. So firstly, to answer your question, I think that this is inevitable in all of our lives. It's just a question of whether we are willing to take that brave step in overcoming. Because so often we stay to our comfort zone, and so often so many people don't get to taste the beauty of what life has to offer on the other side of fear. So an example of mine is I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and I was working as a group fitness instructor specializing in pre and postnatal, and a group fitness company by the name of Les Mills International. They came into South Africa and had exclusivity over one particular gym brand. And at this stage, I became certified. I started teaching these Les Mills classes, and I realized how passionate I was about this brand and what they stood for and the education and just everything that they were injecting into me. I wanted to inject into something larger than just my city. And the opportunities that the company could offer globally were massive. But how was I going to get my little foot outside of Cape Town, South Africa, and make that international step? And so it required a lot of courage. It required a lot of ambition, because every time I would sort of knock at the door, it would be sort of slammed shut in my face. And every time I thought, well, there's only one of me, but there's so many of them. How on earth am I going to stand a chance of being seen, of being heard, of showing face and putting my footprint out there? And it really took a lot of determination, a lot of passion. But the more I kept putting my best foot forward, I really believe that when preparation meets opportunity, amazing things can happen. But you've got to be really determined in what makes you happy as a person and what you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, it's what you stand for. It's your purpose that pushes you to that next step and keeps you aligned with what you're wanting to achieve in life.
Thank you. I liked what you said there about preparation and opportunity.
Yeah. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. Boom! It's a big one, yeah. Love it.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people see where you're at. They look at your Instagram, and I think this is a very common misconception that a lot of people have about people that are successful, and they think it's just landed there in their life.
Social media always broadcasts the glamorous and the lovely parts of what we do, but you often don't see the hours and hours of sacrifice and commitment that you've put in behind the scenes, and for years before you got a platform to showcase what you're finally able to produce as a byproduct. And a lot of us can relate to this. You're not going to whip out your phone at 2 a.m. in the morning when you are so mentally exhausted from putting in the hours that you're emotionally drained, you're crying, you're just hanging on your partner for support, and you're not sure why you're still doing what you're doing. But at the same time, we have those little golden nuggets in life that help refocus us and realign us. And once we're able to pull back, I always say if you're mentally in a place where you're unhappy, something of those one of those elements are out. They're disjointed. You're either not getting enough sleep, your nutrition is out, your routine is out. You gotta take a few steps back, have a look, identify what's out, recorrect it, and that's when you can continue putting your best foot forward. But unless your cup is full, how can you give back into life, you know?
Yeah, I liked what you said then about imbalances. Because life is about living holistically. It's not just about doing exercise and not eating properly, and it's about doing all of these things together, not crazily, but just consistently every day, doing your mind work, doing your exercise, connecting with nature, breathing,
But sometimes that can be so challenging because a lot of us have an obsessive disorder. I don't want to say that, but so many of us become so passionate and so focused on what we're trying to achieve that everything else is a blur, and you only have so many hours in a day to achieve what you're wanting to do. So sitting down for 2 minutes to do mindful meditation or mindful breathing, that's not going to be a priority, But once we hit rock bottom, we realize how important it is to integrate that. But until you've hit rock bottom, you don't realize how important it is to bring it back in.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good segue actually into my next question, because the next theme that I wanted to focus on was rock bottom. And one of my favourite quotes, Caley, is if you want to see the sunshine, you have to weather the storm. So the truth is that there isn't anything more humbling really than reaching rock bottom until you've actually been there. Until I'd actually been there, I didn't really understand this concept.
Yeah.
But in many ways, it's a very positive place. It's a very positive place to rise up from. And I do think that we need to have a struggle within our lives to learn from, and our problems are in fact the building blocks of our happiness. Do you have any specific rock bottom moments that have happened in your life that you would care to share with us today? And if so, what did you learn during those moments? And how did you manage to get out of that situation?
Life was never promised to be easy, was it? So a very big character building moment for me when I was 19 years old is my father died, and it was very unexpected. So this was a very, very humbling experience, and I had to. I was thrown under the rug. This is where fitness helped refocus me as a person. When my father passed away, there's so many different seasons of mourning that you go through, and through each of those phases or stages, you see life, you see yourself, you see people around you in a very different way, different perspectives. You go through a lot of different emotions. You have to process and unpack all of these feelings that are eating into your body, and you have no idea what they mean. You don't know how to work through them. It's all just a whole new world. However, it's part of who you are now, and you need to make the decision to either let it eat into your body or to let it be something that's going to change you for the better. And when this happened, when I was 19 years old, I realized I still had a very, very long life to live, and I was going to need to make some really big decisions in order to have myself walk on the other side of that tunnel and to see the rainbow when I stepped through weathering that storm and I saw the sunshine. I had, there's no way of rushing mourning a loved one. And many years later, and I think what I'm trying to say is everyone has a different experience when losing a loved one. But what I've realized in this process is that you never miss the person any less. You just get better at coping as time goes on. And through that humbling process, I've just been able to really, I guess, listen when people are speaking, rather than just hearing and speaking with your own, I wouldn't want to say selfish desire of getting your message across, but sometimes when you've been in a space where you're just not heard, you realize how important that is in life. There's so many other things that losing my father has taught me, but just, I guess being humbled in that regard has made me slow down life a little.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I lost my grandfather. I think I didn't experience loss until quite later on in life. You experienced it at 19. I experienced it when I was in my 40s, and I always knew that the day my granddad died that I would be absolutely heartbroken. But one thing that it did teach me was empathy. And I'd never quite, when people used to say to me that, someone had died, and I'd go through the motions and I'd say, oh, I'm sorry. But I never quite understood it. And since, I think when you lose, I get quite emotional.
I'm sorry. That's okay.
No, I thought
these things are inevitable in life, right? But nothing prepares us. Nothing prepares us for it.
I thought I nearly started crying when you started talking about your dad. I was like, oh my God, I got a lump in my throat. But no, for me it was empathy, and it really, I understood what people were going through, and I never quite got that before. So, I think
it becomes quite a quiet space to be in, and it teaches you how to listen to not only people's voices, but you start listening to people's souls and what's really happening underneath the cover. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you just learn to look at people and to hear them in a totally different way.
Yeah. Look, so many positives that I've gotten out of, it sounds like a contradiction, but losing my grandparents. Because first it was my grandfather, and then it was my grandmother a few years later. But when I look back, so many positives have come out of it. I'm assuming your father probably died at quite a young age.
Yeah, he did.
And, my grandparents had lived. They'd lived until they were like 86. They'd lived a good life.
Full life, yeah.
So really, you can't complain, Not many people, in their 40s still have their grandparents available, there on hand,
Something really special to cherish and to be grateful for, to celebrate gratitude.
Yeah, definitely. You're very good at these segues. So one of my next questions was actually about gratitude. Now, neuroscientists believe that gratitude is the key to positivity, and expressing gratitude on a morning can affect our brain on a psychological level. In fact, their findings have found that gratitude is actually a very good antidepressant. Which brings me to ask you, how important is gratitude in your life, and how do you exercise this?
After losing my father, I had to really sit myself down and focus on the word gratitude. Because in order for me to get past certain hurdles that just seemed impossible to climb over, I needed to realize what other elements in my life I was grateful for and have that to anchor me. Some people will ask the question, well, how do I do that if I've never gone through trauma, or I haven't lost someone, or, I haven't been through something traumatic, in order to help me realize that we all have our own battles, whether that's small or large. And through that, what I've learned losing my father and helping me view gratitude in a total different way is perspective always resets my focus. There is always going to be someone out there that is in a worse off situation, or what they're going through is completely magnified to what you are going through. And to have that in mind definitely assists me in amplifying my gratitude and to help me take the next step forward.
How do you get perspective?
I'm a very visual and in-depth person. I'm always unpacking things. I'm always analyzing. And I guess for me, I'm always thinking, well, how could this situation be worse? There's many different ways it could be worse. And right now I'm going to focus on what currently is, what it is, and how I can step around this. And sometimes that just, it helps refocus the perspective. I also choose to surround myself with people that are able to bring me back to ground zero, and to help rationalize my thinking when sometimes emotions take your mind into an irrational space.
How long did it take you after the death of your father to start thinking or coming from a space of gratitude about his life and how he's lived his life? How long did that process take? This is quite an interesting question. So while he was on his deathbed in ICU, I had a total of 5 days with him before he passed away, but he was on life support from the moment we took him to hospital. So I never had an opportunity to have my last conversation with him. Was he in an accident?
He had, it was heart failure, in short. His heart was in fibrillation and the muscles around his heart were damaged. He was an alcoholic, and by the time we had got him to the doctor, probably about 3 hours later, he was put on life support, and he was never brought back to consciousness until he died. So the 5 days I had with him was really sitting next to his bed, having to speak. The first few days were words of affirmation, really lifting, building him up, letting him know what life after being in this ICU room was going to be like. And then halfway through that process, I realized that if he's conscious of what I'm telling him, and he knows something more than I do, and he knows he's going to pass away, I wouldn't want him to feel like he's disappointed me and the family. And that's when I had to shift my mindset and realize, okay, Caley, you're not prepared for this, but if death is part of this situation, we got to change. Girl, we got to start changing how we're speaking to him. And we got to make him feel that it's okay to let go. And that very moment made me realize I needed to start speaking words of gratitude. And in that moment, let me tell you, I was off antidepressants already by this stage. And my personal journey, by the grace of God, I had perspective over what was to come. And even though it was the worst challenge that was overcoming my life at that very moment, I knew that there was something bigger. And I would sit there holding his hand, whispering into his ear, and I didn't know if he could hear me or not, but I knew that the power of prayer that had already started building through massive amounts of people was creating such a positive energy out of that hospital room, and I knew it was affecting people's lives. Other than what we were experiencing in that ICU room, but what was generating outside, I had perspective over. And I knew that what was to come, and in the next couple of years, other than what my journey is and the struggle and the trauma that I've had to go through, there's so much good that comes from it. And I just knew it in that moment.
It's interesting what you're talking about in terms of like the energy, you know, because it's really difficult to talk about and to describe, because like you say, there's one thing being in the room and someone's on the deathbed, but then feeling like an energy, because I felt that with my granddad, and it was, I think people thought I was crazy. I think they thought I was nuts, because nobody, I don't think anyone else saw it, you know.
Everyone's journey is so unique and different, and you can never expect someone to understand until and unless they have been in a similar situation, and yet still understand their experience is going to be different to yours, and just respect that their journey is different.
Definitely. 100%, yes. Some people just see what they want to see, like you say, their journey is very different. But for me, there was definitely another plane. There was a different frequency, and there was a different
frequency.
Energy,
I like that. Yep.
That I could feel. That was positive. That was a really positive thing in that kind of moment of chaos and craziness. Just moving off topic a little bit, but I wanted to ask you this question, because you were saying that your father was an alcoholic. So I'm making assumptions here, you know, tell me if I'm right or wrong. But did you have to consolidate anger? Because I guess with him, you know, being an alcoholic, that's self-inflicted, and it's almost like, well, you know, he's brought it on himself, you know, kind of leaving a family to fend for themselves type thing.
It manifests in so many different dark places. I fortunately at that stage had perspective and empathy, which are two topics we've covered, over what he was going through, and I tried to take a selfless look at that rather than feeling like a victim, although I had stages of my morning where I felt like the victim, and why is this happening to me, and why me? Why me? Why does this happen at such a young age? Why can't I have my father take me down my wedding aisle? Why can't I have my father-daughter dance at my wedding, you know? But at the same time, again, taking two steps back and saying, well, let's have perspective here. Some people are orphans by the time they get married. I had my mom. I had the most wonderful, supportive family. So guess what? It's not all that bad. And then just bringing it back, is just trying to understand the demons and the struggles he was fighting in that moment. That really helped me empathize with why he was doing what he was doing. And at the end of the day, I'll never understand, because I never had that conversation with him, and we all have our own demons to fight. But yeah, anger was something that I had to process through. I was angry with life. I was angry that this had happened to me at such a young age, but it also happened. So I can sit and be angry, but what is that going to do for me? It's just going to manifest, and it's going to make me a worse off person. And I had the decision. No one else could make that decision for me. Sometimes it takes a little longer than expected, but we also have to do a full cycle until you can get out to the other side and see the rainbow.
Yeah, and you were very blessed that you had the awareness to see that you're not the victim. It wasn't just about you, and you know, to kind of have that awareness to not feel the anger, and just to kind of, you know, want to move out of that into a place of kind of forgiveness and gratitude.
Yeah, look, as I said, anger was definitely part of it, but I think I was able to have perspective, overcome that very much so when it started creeping up. I was able to shut it down quite quickly, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Caley. Before we end this podcast, I'm going to kind of like completely change the subject.
Yes.
I feel like
change the energy. Let's bring in some happy vibes.
I feel like we got quite heavy there. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about your area of specialism and how did you get, because you specialise in prenatal.
Yes, that's correct.
Pre and postnatal women. How did you get into that?
When I started studying, decided I wanted to be a part of the group fitness space. I've always just had a very strong passion to work with pregnant women. I gravitate towards that area. I don't know if it's a calling or a talent of mine, but it's just always been an interest of mine. So that is the space I chose to get involved in, and I specialized in pre and postnatal fitness training for the first 8 years of my career. Things have shifted since then, but that I still have a very, very big burning passion for that. That will always be the start of where my career kicked off, and I really look forward to going through my own pregnancies, God willing, one day, and to be able to come through on the other side, having done a full circle, you know. I understand so much about it and how to train my clients through it, but I haven't done it myself, so I'm quite interested to see where that's going to go.
Thank you. And my last question I'd like to touch on is, whilst you've not mentioned it directly, you have indirectly mentioned your faith. And you're a Christian, yeah? This
has always been quite a grounding block for me. I was raised within a Christian family, but my parents were also went through seasons of their life where they would be the ones dropping me off at Sunday school and then go home after that. And so I had quite a lot of independence within myself and learned how to make my own decisions from quite a young age, whether this was a space I wanted to be a part of or not. And I think because growing up with alcoholism, my father was always a functioning alcoholic, so I never knew the difference between what being drunk or not was. But I also knew that there was a lot of anger and strife and just a lot of negative energy in the home, and I needed something to anchor myself and my mental well-being from a young age. And the Word and God and just my faith, that was able to anchor me. Then when I met my husband at the age of 16, or we met when we were 11 years old actually, but when we started dating at 16, he then really helped me understand the theoretical side of the Bible. And this, for my personal journey, has really just anchored my life principles. And also within our marriage, you know, it's not always about who is right, but what is right. And these principles is how we approach our everyday life, feeding through kindness and love and forgiveness to people and to all the people that we project our energy on. I guess those principles is what grounds my faith and what anchors me as a person.
Okay. That's
Thanks
amazing.
for asking that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for answering. And just thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. On that note, I'll bring the podcast to an end. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you for coming down to the
it's been
hotel
great.
today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your podcast, and I wish you all the best and success for your book going forward. I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcome of what's to lie ahead in your journey.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to the Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina for allowing us to use this amazing venue here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That was exciting. Thank you.
That was good.
I'm so sorry I had to correct you at the end. I just thought, should I or shouldn't I? But then
Oh my God.
I don't know if you'll cut that out or how, but I just thought maybe after the third, fourth time I'm gonna have to.
I didn't even notice. I still get so nervous.